The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. How is everybody? So I think most people are probably hiding or awaiting COVID test results. Well, yeah, there is that possibility, I suppose. We will get started in about 1 or 2 minutes, guys. Just waiting for my buddy Ganesh to join in. He's messaged me he's on his way. He's trying to get in, but he seems to be having a bit of difficulty joining into this particular session. Strange one. Oh, here he is. Ganesh, how are you?
Hey Dan, I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm well as can be expected, I suppose, in light of the circumstances. Yeah. I know I'm not the only one that's currently in lockdown. Some of our students are telling us that they are also experiencing same.
Whereas in Bangalore, it's mostly, like I said last time, we are in unlock mode. So people are just going out to restaurants, partying. Yeah, things are almost getting back to normal here.
Well, I think they're going to have to learn to live with it one way or another, right? It comes down to when they realize that. Wow. So you did you join with a different link at first?
I joined with the same link, but probably just GoToMeeting just started. I mean, it just went rogue for some time. So I just had to kill it once again and then rejoin. That's what happened.
Yeah, it does do some slightly weird stuff from time to time. I don't pretend to understand GoToMeeting very well at all, actually.
As long as the session is going fine, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I need to pull up some material for us to have a couple things to discuss today.
I see we have 100 plus attendees. That's really good. Morning, afternoon, everyone.
Yes,
Based
excellent.
on wherever you are.
So, guys, if you missed the first session, the first session is the overview session, right? We talk about the platform and we talk about platform capabilities and we talk about how awesome New Relic is. So if you're wondering what you've missed and what you're going to miss, you've missed out on how awesome New Relic is. You just won't know. You'll be in the dark. That's fine. We all know how awesome it is. You'll just have to pick it up going along the way, yeah, you've missed the explanation of the platform itself. But don't worry, because what we're doing now is we are going into aspects of the platform. All right. You also probably miss things like, what full stack observability really is, right? As opposed to what you probably think it is, which is, remember what we talked about last week? Half stack.
Half stack observability.
Or your stack. Yeah. That's just
your stack. Yeah.
stack. That's not the whole thing. All right. Yeah, so, oh, damn, I just pulled up the wrong file. Bear with me, guys. We're session 2, right? Yeah, this is session 2. I got to pull up this guy, right? Module 2.
That's right.
There you go. Okay, how many guys we got? 120 something. Very, very nice. Okay, guys, our agenda for today, we are looking at one aspect of the stack, okay? Big thing, big stack, right? Lots of things, lots of complexity, one part. Middle part, right? Looking at applications. So that's kind of our focus at the moment, right? You think of those, those cookies where it's got the cream in the middle, right? That's kind of like your full stack, right? You got the cookie on the top and the cookie on the bottom. We're looking at the cream bit now, the middle layer, right? Our application. Now, as some of you are aware, we had a session last week. We talked about New Relic, we talked about observability, we talked about a lot of other really, really cool stuff. Don't worry, I will make that available at some point during this session, right? Okay, so you'll be able to go and revise on that. Now, some of the things we want to talk about today, right, are things like how does APM work? What's an agent? Right, that's a good place to start, right? We're going to go in there and we'll talk about whereabouts it is that you can apply an application level agent. We need to have a look at the APM specific things like the summary page, right, where we will see all these really super useful charts. We'll look at transactions, errors, databases. We'll go through a bit of some demos as well. I'm going to try to keep us reasonably hands-on. For those of you that were on the call last week, you'll know that we don't generally tend to do most things with slides. We have a few that we reference off of, but most of what we will show will be in the actual platform itself. If we get some time, we would like to also show you a little bit of distributed tracing, do a bit of a troubleshooting challenge, and logs. So yeah, Ganesh, I'm thinking, so things like distributed tracing and logs, they work really well together. We'll probably do those together because then we can demonstrate logs in context, which is really valuable. And then we'll finish up on maybe some of the easier stuff like app decks, key transactions. And if we get a chance today, depending on how we go for time, if we get a chance, we'll also touch on some infrastructure. So we'll go from the app and we'll go a little bit down. It really just depends on how we go for time. As I said, guys, I'm not going to keep you over the 3-hour mark. So by the time it hits 4 p.m. in Sydney, I will say goodbye and, come back again next week and we'll cover some more material. All right. So it'll be 2 hours and 50 minutes from now is when we are going to finish this session. And we will take a 10-minute break roughly at the midpoint on that one as well. So if you're further west to me, you can have an early breakfast break, go and have a cup of coffee or something. If you're further east to me, you might want to have a snack before dinner. All right. But from what we talked about, look, this is directly from last week, okay? If you can see my slide at the moment, this is New Relic 1. Now, when we talk about New Relic 1, typically we're talking about the platform, but ultimately we need to get data into the database so that it is consumable at the platform layer, right? So we do have this big beast down here, NRDB, and we have multiple different mechanisms to get data into NRDB. Okay, so the most common of which would be the New Relic proprietary agents, right? That's kind of what we're going to start off this session on. But that is not the only way to ingest data, right? We can, there are any number of open telemetry tools, right, that we can use to get data sent into New Relic, right? So if you happen to have, if you've got specific teams that are using one particular solution for one part of what it is that they're doing, we have the ability to kind of knit that stuff together, right? So we know, that it's a very common thing that, out of 5 different siloed teams in an organization, they are probably actually using different tools to do the same job in those different silos because they did things separately. But here we're able to bring it all together into one so that it can start making sense to us. Does that make sense to you, Ganesh?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always talk to, whenever I give a demo or anything. The way I talk about is just like how you mentioned, different agents sending different kinds of data, and just for the people from a development team and the ops team to understand this, I tell them that, hey, you know what, there are different layers of your overall infrastructure. So starting from the bare metal infra is the infra agent, and then one level above is your application from where APM, and one level above is your cloud provider, and that's where you have the cloud integrations, right? So I think getting started with infra and APM would be the right way to get about it.
Definitely. All right, and that's what we're going to do. Just on the topic of presentation mode, there is actually a reason why I'm not throwing this slide deck into presentation mode. It's because I don't actually show all the slides. I kind of cherry pick what I want, and there's a reason for that too. I tend to cherry pick things because, well, things at New Relic tend to change pretty fast, right? And some of the stuff is just kind of a bit outdated. So I go, you know what, I'm going to skip those slides, and instead we'll show you some stuff live, right? So that's the reason why I do it this way. And yes, I've got my little bar here on the side and can look a little bit annoying. But what I did is I tried to just, if you noticed, I made the slides a little bit bigger. I gave you a little bit more real estate on the screen there. So hopefully that's clear. If you need me to zoom in on anything, or if you need Ganesh to zoom in on anything at some point when we're presenting, feel free to ask. Right, now, agents. Over here, I have a little slide on agents, right? It's a very little slide. Right? It's really, really simple. Okay, what do you need in order to install an agent? Okay, really, you kind of just need your New Relic license key, and you need to decide what you should name your application. That's it. Right? That is really pretty much it in terms of getting yourself started. Okay, so let me just grab a new window, and I'm going to jump in here. So I'm going to log into New Relic now. Learn at New Relic University. I need to start this all over again. Look at that. That's not even just one typo. That's 8 letters are all wrong. Learn at newrelicuniversity.com. Right. You guys can use this, right? If you weren't here last week, this is the login, right? Learn at newrelicuniversity.com. I'll stick it in the chat before the labs, okay? Password is observability1, all lowercase. Observability number 1. Easy, really easy. All right, now look where I am. I'm on my homepage, and let's say I have got an application in my environment, and I want to instrument my application, right? Well, you can see up here, I have this little guy, right? Add more data. So it seems to me like that would be the place where I should go if I actually wanted to add more data. We try to keep it pretty literal. All right, now, first up, notice that we have this guy here. Now, I know I told you guys I was going to talk about application agents, but I just want to highlight this guy before I get into application agents. Okay, this is the the cookie. They've got the biscuit and the cream in the middle. This part is the cream part. This is the biscuity bit, but this is the bottom part. Okay, so this is my infrastructure, and you can see with one command. Oh wow, really? One command? Yes, you get infrastructure and log data flowing in, so you can start observing your system. Okay, so why am I highlighting that? Okay, well, it's a new thing, right? If you were in my class maybe 3 months ago, I wouldn't have pointed that out because it wasn't there, right? But it is there now. It was in beta for a little while, and now it's GA, and it is the recommended way of installing infrastructure agents. Okay, so you come in here, you click guided install, you run that command, and the good thing about this and what it will do is it just prompts you for a couple of things. And it will also look to your system and it will say, hey, Dan, I found these other apps on this system. Do you want me to integrate with those? I can. So it's the best easy way to do things. All right. So for low level, go there. From an application perspective, you can see that we have eight languages that we support. All right. Now, so we've got there's four that are interpretive. You got your Python, PHP, Ruby, and Node. Right. There are the two bytecode, .NET and Java, and then we have the two compiled as well. Right. C and Golang. Right. So obviously, because the languages are different, the instrumentation is a little bit different. Okay, so for example, for a compiled language, you will need to obviously recompile the app with the agent in it in order for it to be instrumented, but not the case with something like Ruby or PHP, which are interpretive in the first place anyway. So for each one of these, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. Okay, if we jump in here and just look at one of these for an example, I have a PHP app, maybe I want to instrument it. So I need to say what account I want the agent telemetry to go to. Then it will say something like, okay, we want it to go to NIU training. We will continue, and it then says, just do this, right? Copy and run this command. All right, so we can go through and pull down the install file. All right, and then we apply. You see this? It's actually, remember how I said there's only two things that we really need? One is the license key, and it's gotten that because I just told the wizard that I want to install this into the NIU training account. So it's gone, okay, well, this is the license key for that account. So this will need to be embedded into the config file of the agent. So license key, there's the New Relic account ID, obviously associated with the training account, and then it goes through and runs the installer from there. All right, pretty straightforward. For those of you that are a little bit keen-eyed, you may have noticed that this is looking slightly different. If you've done this before, you would notice that the page has changed a little. All right, we're always trying to update and improve this, make it a little bit easier. All right, so now we're attempting to just go with this, one command install, whereas over here, you see, name your app, install the agent, right, and then restart the app. And for the most part, it is really pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, let's see, where are we going here? Oh, here's a good question. I'm assuming it looks like a question. Oh, actually, no, that's not a question. I see. You guys are asking about the login. No worries. We'll do that a bit later. So, application naming. This is an interesting topic. How should we name our apps? All right. Let me ask you guys a question. Say I've got an app, right? And I name it something really descriptive, like Dan's app, right? That's really descriptive. It tells me exactly what it does, right? Right. But I name it Dan's app, right? And I instrument that app into my works development account, for example. There's another developer also working in the same organization as me, and guess what? His name is Dan as well. And he thinks just like me. He's a genius, right? And he thinks I'm going to name my app some really, really descriptive name, Dan's app, right? What do you think is going to happen? That's my question to you guys. I want you guys to come up with something here. So Summary, 2 apps. They're different apps, okay? 2 different apps. But we're going to send telemetry data into the same New Relic account, and we're going to name the apps the same thing. What will it do with the telemetry data? There is only one correct answer, but I will take all manner of hypotheses on this as being yes, that's a pretty valid assumption, right? All right, and I think I've got we've got some answers, which is really good. And it looks like you guys are all in agreement too, and this is really nice. I like I like this one. New Relic will get confused. That's a nice response. Yeah, New Relic will not know what to do with the data. Actually, you're kind of correct. New Relic won't know how to separate the data. It won't know. So what it will do is what the rest of you guys suggested it will do. It will merge the data together. So let me ask you guys question number 2. How valuable do you think the telemetry data would be if it's coming from 2 completely separate apps? They're unique from each other. They have no association, but we've named them the same thing. And the telemetry is going in. Yeah, it's rubbish. That's exactly right. The telemetry data will be effectively meaningless, right? Yeah, it will not be helpful. Now, the next, you guys are asking me questions. This is good. Why will it merge the data? Why will it do it? Well, let's go back to our slide, right? Let me find that slide. Why will it merge the data? Because we only have 2 parameters to match. We only need a license key and an app name. That's it. That's all it needs to say, okay, this is the app on this account with this name. Now, why will it merge the data? And actually, do you want it to merge the data? In the example I gave you, it's definitely a no, right? They're completely different apps. But sometimes you would want it to merge the data, right? And no, it doesn't recognize it as a duplicate and throw warnings or anything like that. No. Actually, you've kind of highlighted the exact reason why I'm talking about this, and I even have a slide on it. Right? Because the system doesn't do it. It just says, hey man, yeah, what'd you call it? Right, I'll stick it in that account right there. Great. So this is not a bug. This is a feature, right? It's a good feature. We actually want this capability. Where you do want this to occur is, for example, if I have a distributed app that lives on 4 different boxes. Wow, that's kind of cool, right? It means that I can instrument the app one time, and as I spin up more instances of that app, all of a sudden, I'm getting more telemetry coming back into New Relic, but it's all reporting in as what it really is, which is one app. Okay? Especially for, containerized environments and stuff like that too. You got n number of instances, right? We don't know how many, but it's going to spin up. Do you really want every single one of those to have a separate name and appear as a different app? And you're like, no, you actually really don't. So it's a feature. There you go. So yeah, we need you to, all of this is really me just saying, think about the app name, okay? It's important. Right? In fact, when you jump over here, right, and if you're looking at the installs, you'll even notice that we have a docs page on app naming. That should be enough to tell you guys this is kind of important. It's so important. We've got a page on it. Not only that, it's so important. I'm going to copy and paste that page for you guys now, because naming your app matters. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, there's a couple of other things we need to talk about with app naming as well. So, as you can see, the name of the app is the name that is assigned in the config file. You can change the application alias. I can show you where to do that. If I go into an app, let me close out of this now. And let me just pick an app, okay? I'm going to pick the Food Me app. If I go into the application settings, so you go to settings menu, go to application. This gives me the ability to change the display name of the app, okay? Display name or application alias. This changes what the app looks like in APM. You have not changed the config file, right? So just keep that in mind, because if you were to change the alias and you don't change the config file, later on you're looking at an app and you're reading the config file and then you're sort of thinking to yourself, where is this reporting? You can get yourself a bit confused, right? Because the config file will report differently. So yeah, name changes at this point are for display purposes only. They're not actually an underlying config change. Right. So that's where you would go. That's where you would go about changing the alias. I think I have a config file lying around here somewhere. Give me a second. Open recent. I'm sure I have one open recently. Oh yes, this looks like one. Okay, here we go. So let me just show you here. This is a config file, all right, just for the Minikube cannot be opened. Did I try and open it? No. Here's our config file. I've got my license key, and then down here we have we've named the app. Oh look, there you go. I gave it a descriptive name, a bit more descriptive than Dan's app. This was a demo for a Java app that I did on Friday the 13th. All right, so you can see it's a pretty easy file to read, right? And I'm just highlighting that there are other things that you can do to alter the functionality of the agent at this level. But as a minimum, you need to have your license defined and you need an app name defined. If you don't define an app name, it'll still work. It will just use the default application name, which is my application. Right? It's just my application. That's the name of the app. Okay. I'm going to throw a question at you guys. Say I deploy the agent and I leave it with the default name, my application, and it's up and running and it's working for a month or so. And then I realize that my application, although it is my application, it's not really an ideal name for my app. And I want to later change the name, right? I want to come back in config file and redo it all. All right. What do you think happens to the telemetry? And before you're all freaking out, I'll give you a bit of a hint. The telemetry doesn't get deleted, okay? If that's what you're thinking, you're like, oh no! No, it's not, but you know. Now, I said it doesn't get deleted, but actually, I've got some answers here. You guys are, well, some of you are correct. It does start from scratch. Whoa, what? Yeah, isn't it a new deployment? Yeah, it's a new deployment, right? So hang on, it doesn't delete the telemetry. No, it doesn't. Definitely, it does not delete the telemetry, but it starts from scratch. Yes, it does. So what does that mean? It means that your one app that you've deployed will appear 2 times in New Relic. One time it'll be listed there as my application, and the telemetry in that will have stopped, but you will have all your historic data for that first month that you ran it. And then you will have this new app that all of a sudden appeared with the correct name, and it is now reporting in from there on. See why I say naming these things are important, right? And don't even ask me if we can merge it, because we can't. We don't merge that data together. We now have 2 apps, right? Your bad name app and your good name app. Eventually, the bad name disappears. Okay, when your apps stop reporting, you might correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ganesh. I think it's around the 90-ish day mark, something like that. When your app stops reporting, it will eventually remove itself from the APM interface.
Yep, it grays out, and after some time, either the user will have option to delete it, or it just gets deleted after 30 days, I believe.
Oh, 30. Okay, shorter than I thought.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 90. So we are talking about, guys, I'm talking about this menu here, right? This is your APM apps, right? So your apps will appear here, and if they stop reporting for a period of time, somewhere between 30 and 90 days, then they will eventually disappear from this list. By the way, they actually disappear from this list before they get deleted. So the data is actually still there, right? The app is still there. It's just that we remove it from view because it hasn't been reporting for a long time. Now, all of this just to name an application. Didn't realize it's going to be so complicated. Now, you guys have asked me another really good question with regard to agents. And you've asked, but what about networking? How do we get this thing talking to New Relic? Well, we're going to do this. It's going to be very complicated. Pay really, really close attention. All right. New Relic. Now, not networking, right? Networks, right? New Relic networks. You want that, right? This is the page. And if, yeah, there you go, right? The first page that's not an ad, right, is the documentation, and it's networks. It's the networks page. You want this guy, right? Because it's going to give you useful info. And I like to give it to you because it stops you guys asking specific questions that you're probably going to ask otherwise, which is like, but how does the agent send data into New Relic? Is it secure? And now I don't have to answer that question because you can see right here on the network page, it tells you how the telemetry is transmitted into NRDB. Right now, so yeah, we go down. These are some information with regard to the user-facing domains. And now over here, this is probably what you were wondering about. You have listed the IP ranges, right, for the different regions. And just a bit of a heads up on that as well for all of us down here in APJ region. I don't know if you guys know it, but we're actually getting a DC down here at some point. They're in the process of implementing it. So there's not one at the moment, but it's on the way. Not very far away, I believe. All right. So yeah, port 443 is required for telemetry into from the agent into New Relic. Yes, it can go via a proxy as well. Okay. Now that's the APM, right? These are the APM ranges up here, both for US and for EU regions. And you can see that we have this is actually where the telemetry data gets sent to. So the agent will go to resolve collector.newrelic.com, And then it will be, the reason why we've got this little asterisk here is because we talk to a URL, like we talk to collector.newrelic.com, that FQDN, and then it will assign us a particular number. And then after that, the agent will talk to collector number something or other when it's sending its telemetry data into New Relic. So that's when it's doing what we call its harvest cycle, right? This is like go through and gather all the info and send it all in. Now, a little bit further down, you also have all the infrastructure agent domains so that you understand what's going on here, right? So as you probably guessed, those low-level agents, yeah, they report data in as well, but they do it completely separately and to different locations, right? So depending on what type of data it is. And there are the network ranges for those. So these are the external access that you will need to enable from the infra agent point of view. Browser, same deal. Browser's a little bit different, obviously, because now, if we go back to our little cookie, this is the top layer of the cookie now above the cream, right? This is where your customers are going to be sending data, right? When their browsers are shipping data to New Relic so that we can analyze it. So not so much internally for you guys, but yeah, your customers will send data here. And mobile has its own domains as well. And there's some synthetic info. So this is why I love to show you guys this site. Thank you very much for asking me the network questions, because if you didn't ask me those questions, I would almost certainly forget to show you this glorious page, probably my favorite docs page, Ganesh. Do you have a favorite docs page?
My favorite workspace is dictionary. Anytime I want to go for an RQL, I go to the dictionary, I find the types, and then I just write the query based on that. I love dictionary page.
Oh yeah, dictionary is really good too. We
Really. And by the way, about the networks thing that you just mentioned, this page really came handy last Thursday.
Yeah.
When one of our customers said, "Hey, you have an incident on New Relic and your system is not working." We were like, "No, we don't. Everything is working fine from our side. None of the customers are reporting." And we got on the call with the customer. We tried looking at everything. The agent is running. Everything seems to be fine, but we don't have data on New Relic. That is when this New Relic, the networks document really came handy. That we looked at the domains and then asked them, "Hey, you know what? Can you just ping it once from your server?" And these are all on-premise servers, right? And yeah, there is no connectivity. It looks like the security team locked some ports and some domains overnight, and things just stopped reporting to us.
Okay, so yeah, that's perfect example of why this is important. So you send this to your security guys, right? They need to allow,
Yeah.
obviously they need to allow this connectivity. And if they say no, then you don't get telemetry data. you need to use proxy, right? You got to go some other way, but you need connectivity one way or another, right? Because we do sometimes get can we do it on a?
And by the way, I just did a little bit of check on the APM, the application, how we can remove it. Looks like it is the automatic removal of the application happens after 93 days.
I thought it was 90.
See, you got it right.
Yeah.
You got it right. It is 93 days, but if the user wishes to remove it right after 12 hours, the user can run a REST API and then delete the application.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Once the app stops reporting data after 12 hours, just go ahead, run the REST API, and then delete the application.
Yeah. So that's an important point. And so, guys, you will find that things that may seemingly intuitively should be in a certain place, you may not find them. So, like for example, FoodMe app, right? FoodMe app over here. Maybe if I click this little ellipsis, you would think, oh, maybe there's a delete button, right? I can kill the FoodMe app or something like that. No, you can't. No, you can't. Not from here. But as you pointed out, Ganesh, yeah, via the REST API, we can go through and clear things out from there. We we will look at that later this session, because this session I want to talk a bit about deployment markers as well, and talk about app decks, all of that stuff. We can jump into the REST API and have some examples on that. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about all that stuff in a minute. Just looking at your questions, because I can see you guys are just chattering away, which is fantastic. Oh dear, I'm looking from a few minutes ago. You guys have got, some of you have said you've had disjointed data being mashed together in production apps. Oh, not nice. There's a question here with regard to mobile apps. Ganesh, you might know the answer to this. React Native, Flutter. How's our support on those? Do you have any idea? I think React
I
Native.
will. Yes. On React Native we are.
Yeah.
But for Flutter, at the moment, this is in part of a roadmap for Q1 2022. So yeah, I can get more details on this.
All right, and okay, thanks for that. And there's a question here with regard to things like ad blockers from the browser point of view, so yeah, you will find, and I don't know if there's specific ways around it or anything, but you do find that if there are things actually living inside the customer's browser that is preventing that telemetry to go to New Relic, then yeah, you won't get telemetry from that particular customer. It's so if you were here last week, that customer's browser is part of the full stack, right? We can't exclude it. It is the top layer of the stack. It is a very important layer. However, it is not part of your stack, right? It's part of the stack that you can't control. So just like that, I mean, if they want to install NoScript, for example, and make it so that nothing runs on that page except, except requests to that specific domain only, there's not really anything that we can do about that. It just means from that particular customer, we won't be getting telemetry data coming in. All right. Typically, browser data is collated from thousands, tens of thousands of different browsers all over the place. Some of them invariably will have tools in there that will block things, or they'll be on networks that will block the transmission. It's just it's just the way that part of the stack operates. We can't really control it. How to configure alerts and dashboards for OpenTelemetry. All right, so if you want to do that, you need to get your OpenTelemetry data to be sent into New Relic first over here with the add more data. That'll help you to do that. And then in a couple of sessions, we will take you through, I'll just show you where it is, but we're not going to go through it today. In a couple of sessions, we're going to go over here to dashboards, and we'll spend a bit of time in dashboards. We're also going to spend a little bit of time here, which is querying your data. And we'll look at, okay, this is how you run queries. And when you run queries that bring you some very nice, meaningful data, you can save those as charts on dashboards. And that will be how you configure your purpose-built dashboards for OpenTelemetry. So yeah, particularly useful thing to do if, for example, you're only using telemetry data platform, you're using the lowest level of New Relic platform, you're shipping data in from other tools. We give you the ability to ingest it all. We still give you the ability to build out your own dashboards. Right? When you're using that data, you won't be able to use things like APM. Right, you won't be able to use these curated pages if you're unless you're a full stack observability user. But there's nothing to stop you building out your own dashboards from scratch, and that is part of what we will be talking about in this course. But we'll do it in a later session. Now, next question. Can we name an app? Ooh, there's a good question. Can we name an app using two different ways at the same time? So, like, for example, using environment variables and system property arguments. I'm going to give that one to you, Ganesh, just because I feel like I'm doing all the talking. So, yeah.
Yes, you can give you can name the app using two different ways, but then there's a certain level of priority that's taken when the app data starts getting sent to New Relic One platform, and it picks up the name. I believe the priority is always what it picks up as a runtime. So if you pass the application name in the CLI when you're actually running the application, that is the one that takes the priority. If not, everything that comes from the config file. And again, in the config file, there are two ways. One is the master config file name that you give in the top of the config file. And towards end of the config file, there are different labels that are given based on the environment variables that you set, based on what is the environment variable. And if you say, environment is production, pick up this app name. If environment is staging, pick up this app name, based on what is set in the config file towards end of it. That value is picked up. And if that is also not available, it just picks up the name that you gave in the top of the config file. Did I get that right, Dan?
Yeah. I'm just see here, guys. This is
this one.
That's exactly what you were talking about just now. See how we can define application environments, right? And then obviously this is ideal because it means you instrument your app, and then depending on where you deploy it, it'll have different environment variables in those environments, right? And it'll pick that up, and it'll apply that to the actual app name. So you can see by default what it's done here is it's just said, well, okay, if I determine that you're in your development environment, I will append the word development after it. So you can potentially then have the app running in 3 or 4 different environments, and perhaps all reporting back to the same account even, right? But they will be listed separately, right? Which is what you want. So this is a Java config file here. You can see that it's picking it up from this parameter here when you run your app. So that's one of the naming aspects, and then the other one is as well. You can actually append additional names here, which Ganesh also mentioned, right? So we've called a demo Java app Friday 13th, but you see this to report data to more than one app. Yeah, and one reason is for roll-up reporting. You can separate the app names with a semicolon, right? So yeah, for example, my application 2. This could be my app, could be the application itself, and this could be the second node out of several that all report in as my app. I can give you guys an example of that and how it looks in New Relic once you've got the thing deployed in place. You can see here we've got Pet Clinic, right? So you notice we've got New Relic Pet Clinic. That's the roll-up application. We've got Pet Clinic 1, 2, 3. And that's so the this guy here, Pet Clinic, is the aggregate of 1, 2, and 3 combined. Oops, I didn't mean to click on it. All right. Next question, good question. Is there any experience using New Relic for A/B testing? Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a link on that, right? Because we actually have something pretty sweet that's just for that.
I was just trying to answer that one, but yeah, a reference would be really good.
Yeah, are you? Am I going to the right place? Is this what you were going to explain? So we got build apps.
I was. Yeah, you can this one, plus I am going to give the easiest way, like few of our customers already do it, where few of my customers do it all the time, right? What they do is they use custom attributes to track the differences. What they do is with the new deployment, they just add an attribute saying this is the new code, and on the dashboards or on the APM summary page, whatever they build, they're just going to apply these filters and then do the performance comparison. But yeah, I think what the reference that you gave is correct.
So guys, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Yesterday we talked about yesterday was Sunday. Oh no, lockdown's getting to me. Every day's the same. Last week we talked about New Relic 1 applications, right? They are React apps that are built on top of New Relic 1. So the cool thing about this is we've given you the framework to build out your own A/B testing app, right? This takes you through, essentially all the aspects to get one going, right? You can see here, like this is the drop down, right? Build an A/B test, and then look, you first create the nerd pack, then you add charts to it, add tables, so that you can test exactly as you want, right? That would be where I'd recommend you go for that. Let's see, where are we? Can we add SLA reports to a dashboard? Yeah, definitely. But I would argue that you want to probably also add SLO reports. They're even more important, and also add SLIs. So if you want to learn more about that, we do have a uptime, performance, and reliability class where we go through alert quality management, and we go through service level management in New Relic and how to apply all that stuff. But definitely here we're going to be talking about charts and dashboards. If you want to learn more about the service level management stuff, we do cover that stuff in a totally different session. If so, with that app that I've just provided you guys with the A/B testing that you guys will develop, then yeah, you can capture the transactions that are going to app A and app B, and what that allows you to do is an analysis on the different results that you're getting by having the app deployed twice. All right, so tons of questions. This is good stuff. Now, where were we up to? We were talking about naming apps. Look at that. We just got stuck on one slide. All right. I'm going to take us through summary now. We want to do this, and then I want to probably get you guys to do a little bit of a lab, or maybe I'll get you to do a demo, and then we'll do a lab. So I'll show some stuff, then you can show some stuff, and then we can do a bit of a lab. How's that? So, bang.
Whoops.
Crash. That's my Chrome. Never a day goes by where Chrome doesn't crash for me. It is literally every day. Probably doesn't help that I have something like over 100 tabs open on about 6 or 7 different windows. Just don't think it was designed for me. I'm going to take us in here. I'm going to show us our favorite app, Web Portal. Now, summary. That's where we land, okay? I know some of you guys have used New Relic before. Some of you guys are new to this. Even for those of you that have used it before, the interface has changed a little bit anyway. You've probably realized this is all new, related entities. We didn't used to have this here, right? Workloads are new, right? We now know that this Web Portal app is contained in 17 different workloads. And you can see that there are 65 synthetic monitors that are sending synthetic tests back to this app. So that's kind of cool. That's brand new. But let's take it from the top. Okay, we've got an application here where we can see the mean average response time on the app, right? Front and center. Right, do you guys remember the 4 golden signals? We talked about it last week. What are the 4 golden signals? So in the Google Site Reliability Engineering Handbook, Chapter 6, Monitoring Systems, if you can only monitor these 4 things, then you should monitor these 4 things. Like if you can only monitor 4 things, it should be these 4. So what were they? Good hint is first one is front and center. So yes, you guys have got them. Latency, traffic errors, and saturation. Perfect, right? So what we are looking at right here is our latency on this app. Now, one of the things I really like about this is it very visually and easily breaks this app up for me straight away. I can see about a third of the response time of this app comes from the application code itself. The other 2/3 is downstream. See how cool that is? Like immediately I can kind of see I've got a bit of a profile on this app. 2/3 of this app's response time is dependent on downstream services. That's the green part. It's so when it says external, we are talking about external to this app, right? To Web Portal directly. So I want to take us over to the service map now, just so you can kind of understand that a little bit. If I go to Web Portal, like let's say I browse to Web Portal. In fact, let me just browse to Web Portal, right? So this is what it looks like. We go webportal.telco.nrdemo. This is a real site, right? .com. I go to Web Portal. Bang, my browser, I resolve the name, I get an IP, I create a connection, boom, and I load the data. What did I do? I just came from here, right? From my browser session, and I established a connection to this guy. But you see that for Web Portal to respond to me, depending on what I do, it might need to make a lot of requests to downstream services. Okay, so for example, if I'm assuming if I go to login and I click on that, it's probably going to, when I say I want to log in, it's going to forward that request to the downstream login service, right? I want to view the inventory, like show me the phones, show me the plans, that kind of stuff, right? I will be looking at, plans, inventory. I'm going to be looking at these downstream services. So coming back here, this is what I call at the moment, this is the front of the back end, right? So this is my landing portal page. There's another one of our golden signals, right? We can see our throughput here, and there's another one again. So there's our error rate. And here we have an industry standard, a different industry standard. So everything here is, kind of industry best practice stuff. We've got some golden signals, and then we've got the application performance index for this particular app. Now, notice that we've got 2 lines on here. So I can see there's the app server line and the end user line. And we get a score out of 1 for this. We'll talk more about this in a little bit. Incidentally, 1, although it seems like it's the best score, 1 is actually not the best, right? But as we go down, it gets worse. So just to make it more confusing. But we are assessing our app server on a 370 millisecond latency, and we're getting a good score on that, which is saying that, for the most part, we're sticking well under that. And we can see it here anyway. And we are assessing our browser performance on a 1.7 second threshold. And what does that tell you? It's actually telling you that, our app is responding, well under 370 milliseconds on a very regular basis. But when we look at things from a customer point of view, we're actually kind of struggling to have a 1.7 second page load from a browser point of view. Right, so this is really kind of nice, because if you're only monitoring your stack, you're never really going to see how the performance is from the browser point of view. Never going to understand, did what I do, it looks nice from my app point of view, but did what I just did affect my end user load times at all. So, oh look, we've got something happened. All right. So if I scroll a little bit further down, I can see individual transactions, and I can even drill down into one specific trace if I want to. And before I click around anyway, I just want to familiarize you with everything. Scroll a little bit further down, and I can see the underlying infrastructure as well. And this is where I would see if there's saturation. So there's my fourth signal. All four golden signals on the summary page without needing to click on anything. I can see that my web portal app is actually hosted across 4 different hosts. Let's see, CPU is low. Memory utilization looks pretty uniform, and throughput, I say, looks like the load balancer looks like it's doing its job pretty well. Throughput, response time, everything's roughly uniform. So a question just came through. It's a much more complex answer than I can give you right away, but it says for service level objectives, do we need to consider only the app server duration? The only thing I will say about that is that actually for determining service level objectives, you need to define your system boundaries first. That is actually your number one thing, and your system boundaries are typically close as you can get to the customer, right? But there is I'll send you a link on that. If I go New Relic SLO, I reckon I'll find something pretty quick. And I think you're going
to answer this question from a customer perspective, right? Or the cases that we usually see is that how do we define, or what are the list of SLOs do we consider, right? It purely depends on use case to use case basis. That's because we have customers who are a pure e-commerce customers whose SLO is completely dependent based on their business overview. They wanted to see how many orders were placed, what's the revenue impact, right? So in that case, while the teams are considering the app server and the backend performance, it's just not only that, they really want a reflection of that to be at a business metric also. So to answer the question, it purely depends on use case to use case, and the best practice is just considering the app server duration is not good enough for SLOs. You need to have end-to-end visibility of how your end user is performing, how your backend is performing, how your database is performing, overall, how everything is impacting your business.
I agree with you totally. And we have I'll put this here. This one is pretty good. It'll definitely get you started. It talks about the indicators and the objectives as well, right? So take a look at that. Yeah. So yeah, like Ganesh said, it depends entirely on your use case. I would argue that the majority of the time, I think people probably want the end-to-end experience as the SLO measurement. It's not always going to be that way, but yeah, typically it will be the browser duration that will be more important to you. Well, if you're customer facing, again, depends entirely on your business and what you're doing. But if your business involves having an online presence and milliseconds matter, because they do in that kind of an environment, then yes, your browser duration is going to be far more important to you than the app. I mean, the app duration will be encompassed in the browser duration anyway. So by tracking that one, you're vicariously tracking the application directly, but you're looking at it from a customer point of view. All right. So yeah, I've given you guys some material there on essentially just best practices to get you started on service level objectives and your service level indicators, because a lot of people are still at the, or just mainly focused on SLAs. SLAs are, well, usually they're there and we can't change them, right? They're the legal agreement. So it's not really an SLA that you're trying to achieve. You're wanting to set your own objectives that are more stringent than the SLA, right? So that's what our focus should be. It's that SLO. All right, let's see. I'm going to continue on for the moment. Let's jump in here and have a look at some transactions. Actually, sorry, before transactions, I'm going to go, we went to service map. I'll show you dependencies, which is another way of interacting with all the other components that this service communicates with, right? So on the summary page, you saw that there were 8 hosts. Well, we can see them here, right? These are our 8 hosts. And here are our downstream services, right? So there's the login service, the inventory, so they're all there, right? Downstream services that we know of that are not actually directly instrumented will still appear here, but they just appear as an external service. So we don't get the full, you don't get the in-depth telemetry, but you do get, on a system that's not instrumented, you'll still find the response time and the throughput. We know how many calls we made to that system. We know how long that took to respond, but it's essentially a black box to us. We don't see what goes on the inside. So yeah, this view can be filtered, right? I'm looking at everything at the moment. Go to services, it's there. Have a look at front end. Now, if I look at this, this is the transactions, right, that occur on this one application. Now, this is kind of important as well. So, and it is also related back to the SLO, SLI discussion, in that, are you attempting to track the app as a whole, or does the app have a very specific function and that's what you really want to keep an eye on, right? So there might be 2 or 3 transactions here that are, the important ones that your customers perform, and those are the ones that you've got SLOs on, right? So you want to then maybe track those differently. We'll talk about key transactions a little bit later. You can apply a separate AppDex score just to a transaction, right, within the app. Otherwise, it's fine again to store to do it against the entire app, right? Now, you can see here, I'm looking at all transactions. I don't find this particular chart all that useful, Ganesh. I don't know about you, but I mean, yeah, okay, it's telling me that this app runs the phones transaction more than any other. Why I'm telling you I don't find it useful is that this doesn't tell me anything in terms of, is that good or bad, right? Like 34.6% for phones, it might be the way this app was designed. Okay,
exactly.
So
yeah,
I want you guys to understand that this is not saying that this is a problem, right? We're not saying, oh, look at phones, it consumes 30% of this app's time. The app might be written that way, okay? If you're troubleshooting, I mean, this helps you understand what the app does. But when you're troubleshooting, this thing doesn't really help you so much. I think what you want to do is say, this is 34% of what this app does. I'm going to click on it now, and I'm going to break down that transaction into its different components. And it's this chart over here on the right that has much more troubleshooting value to you, because this tells me if things are functioning the way they have been functioning, or it tells me if things are weird. So let me give you an example of this, right? I'm going to choose a longer time frame here. because I'm pretty sure we can find something in this app that looks weird. Right, nothing weird here, but okay, still nothing weird. Hang on, let me see if I can find something weird. Oh, yeah, there's weird stuff. All right, I'm gonna zoom in here, right? I'm gonna go there. So that's another thing. I don't know if you guys know this. If you've not played with New Relic before, you won't know. You can drag and zoom in on any component. And you can see it correlates on all the charts. So you're going to get an exact time slice that matches up across the board. Now, here we go. Click on that. And also another really handy feature, so Ganesh is in a different time zone to me, but I can do this. I can zoom that and I say, this is really important to me. I'm going to send it to my buddy Ganesh because he's about to look at it because, I don't want to. I can do that, right? So I copy that and it'll be a link where he gets this time slice. Now, it will show different times when he looks at it because it'll be relative to him, but it will be the exact same time slice window. So this is 10:09 to 12:38 according to, well, it's according to, to be honest, I don't know what time zone that is because it's whatever this account was. It's not my personal account. So it's the learn account, whatever time zone it's set in will be what that is reporting as. Now, you can see we've got a bit of a spike here. All right. Now, in our case, you saw me just looking at transactions a moment ago and everything was uniform, yeah? I have found a problem here, but you can kind of see it. It sort of makes sense why everything's uniform because, well, when you're looking at transactions over here, what you're really doing, guys, is you're zooming in on the blue bit. Okay, this is this application's code. So if you've got a troubleshooting problem if you've got a problem where you've worked out it's somewhere downstream, jumping into the transactions here, it may not actually help you, right? If you can see here, we're actually still performing the same, right? From this app's perspective, it's just this app is waiting a lot longer for some downstream services to respond. But what I can do is I can do this. I can say, okay, my transactions here are okay. I'm going to go to external, right? This is the green bit. I want to zoom in on the green bit now because it seems like we have a problem there. And you'll start to see all these charts quite similar in their format. Again, 43% of our downstream time is planned. That doesn't mean necessarily that that's a problem. But certainly when we look over at the chart on the right, this tells you, are you having any anomalous readouts? And certainly it looks like it, right? This is interactive. So if this purple bit is a bit suspect, so I can remove it and say, look, I want to confirm, right? All right, the inventory seems fine, fulfillment seems fine, login. Notice it changes the scale. We're down to 100 milliseconds now, yeah? So the login service is very fast. But when I go back here, you can't even see the login service because it's so quick compared to planned service response. And often your charts you'll think there's something missing on your chart because when it has to put everything on the same scale, things that are very, very fast usually won't even be visible. But that's pretty clear, guys. We can kind of see we're experiencing a problem, aren't we? And we know it's one of our services. It's a downstream service called plan.telco.nr demo. Now look what I can do from here. I can go, all right, let me now click on that one. And straight away from here, I can see, yeah, definitely, we had a bit of a weird thing going on. Response time went right up, but throughput didn't go up. So did we overload that system? No. Like we actually haven't thrown any more requests at it than normal. So why did it go from being, whatever speed it was, 600 millisecond response, to 2.5-second response, right? That would definitely be viewable by the customer. And if you don't know if it's viewable by the customer, we can go back to the summary and check the end user AppDex score on that. And we should see that it would drop down. And we can go to browser and we can say, well, what happened from the browser perspective? Were our load times visibly slower from the outside? As I scroll down, I can even see, all right, the requests being made to our downstream service called plan were being made by these transactions. So there's a browse plan and browse plans. So there's a little S on the end there. And so it seems like those two transactions make up almost all of the calls that are occurring on this downstream service. So I've hardly done anything, guys. I went from summary. I saw the green bit went up, and I went to external to investigate, and I clicked on plan, right? And I've already kind of isolated. I know which downstream service it is, and I know which transactions in my app invoke those downstream calls. So I'm just going to pause there for a second, see if you guys have any comments or any questions on that.
There was one good use case that one of the attendees mentioned, that when they initially configured New Relic, they discovered like the top 3 transactions didn't really make any sense, but it was actually, there was an underlying performance issue that they were able to identify with the top 3 transactions. And once they got reported by the most time consuming transactions table, right? So yeah, it was really helpful then.
That's a good point. And yeah, I should kind of clarify, because I tend to say, no, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I tend to say for troubleshooting, I don't look here so much, right? But there's a caveat on that. I don't look here so much when I understand that that's what the app does, right?
Yep.
Obviously, this helps me troubleshoot like quite significantly if I've instrumented an app and my top 5 transactions are not what I thought the app is supposed to do, right? If that was the case, I'm like, why does this app do that, right? It's spending 80% of its time doing this weird thing that I didn't write it to do that, right? Now, this is, so we just looked, I want you guys to understand as well, in New Relic, everything's connected, right? So you can look at things from one perspective and then look at something else from a totally different perspective and see the same thing. That's the cool thing, because if the problem exists, well, you're just looking at it from a different angle, but it's the same problem. And this is exactly what I'm showing you here. We were looking at external services. We could see that the plan service was slow, and there were 2 transactions that were invoking the plan service on a regular basis. So it makes sense that when I come back and the time window is exactly the same. Now that I've set it, when I dragged, it will keep that on my different pages. So I'm looking at the same slice of telemetry data for my transactions as I was when I was looking at my external services. That's why it makes sense and it matches up really nicely. When I was on external, I'll just go back and refresh your memory. When I was on external and I went to plan, because we could see it was problematic, it says browse plan and browse plans consume all of the calls that are being made to the downstream. So when I go back, surely if my downstream service for a period went slower, yeah, browse plan and browse plans. See, notice phones is the top time consuming transaction, but phones is not experiencing this problem. So yeah, just because he's number 1 doesn't mean he's a problem. Actually, phones looks fine. But when I can see plans, oh, yeah, now look at that. That's a really, really, really obvious anomaly. And then when we look down, we say plans and plan, both of these while they are not consuming all of this app's time, whenever this app has to invoke those particular transactions, those two transactions seem to be much, much slower. And the cool thing is, look, you can break the transaction down now, right, into, you can see we've got the different categories. So you get right into the transaction now, and I can say, okay, well, you know, all of this stuff looks okay. And I mean, we can just, we can do this, put some of the others in. I'll take response time out as well. Yeah. So yeah, you can, now it looks completely normal, right? As soon as you put plan back in, we can see the whole problem from there. And look at this. When I scroll right down, now I get transaction traces. And this is another thing I want to show you guys. This is really, really important. It shouldn't really be any surprise that we seem to be getting browse plan as our transaction trace options. So the agent that is installed inside this app is looking at the app, and it's only going to send transaction traces for the app on transactions that are very slow. That's important. Now, question. How does it decide if an app is slow or not? If a transaction is slow or not.
Transaction.
Yeah. Any idea? There's a specific mechanism that we use. It's not an averaging function.
Someone said in case if there's an anomaly.
Well, it kind of is an anomaly in its own way.
Yeah. And standard deviation based on previous calls. Yeah, more like the same.
This is good. They
Is
don't
it determined by duration?
Yeah, they don't know. This is good. Yeah. All right, so we get to show you something new. So you don't know. Excellent. So how does it? So it needs to select some transactions that it says, okay, these are most likely problematic, right? You should look at these, right? The way it does it is actually via Apdex. What? Yes, it does it via Apdex. And this is another reason why Apdex is important. So coming back to summary for a second, let's have a look at this. To understand what's going on here, I've got an app that is averaging 60-ish milliseconds response time. Fair enough? Everybody agree? I'm waiting. Yes, I think I got agreement, right? We're about 60 milliseconds, roughly. Okay, we spike every now and then when things go wrong, but that's our normal performance. Now, look at the Apdex score here. For our app, we have actually set a 370 millisecond threshold. I can show you where to set it too. If we go down here into settings application, we can come here and shows my app name. And it also shows that this guy here, I can't change this because I don't have right permission on this account, but I can definitely see where it is. 0.37 seconds, 370 milliseconds, right? I pointed this out at the beginning, but I'm going to highlight it a little bit more. So is it any wonder that we're getting quite a good app server score? Of course, because the way Apdex works is it says, all right, if 370 milliseconds is my benchmark, any transaction coming in faster than that is going to get a good score from me. And a good score means a 1, right? A perfect 1, right? You can't score better than that. You're faster than 370 milliseconds, perfect score. Now, actually, I can do one better, guys. I can do one better. I have a thing, and I will show you the thing. There. See? You think I can't see that little thing down in the bottom corner, but I can. So we had a 370 millisecond time threshold on web portal, and anything below that is considered a satisfied transaction. Anything from 370 milliseconds up to 4 times that amount. So what's that? 1480 milliseconds. Yeah. So 370 up to 1480 milliseconds in our case is what we call a tolerating transaction. The terminology is, it goes back to customer satisfaction, right? Ultimately, this is about, is the app performing satisfactorily? It's the application performance index. So our customer is probably going to tolerate the transaction if it goes 600 milliseconds, 700 milliseconds, right? Now they're waiting for it and they're going, hey, what's going on? And bang, then it loads. It's a bit of a nuisance, but it worked. If your transaction takes more than 4 times the threshold value, at that point, it's what we call a frustrated transaction. Anything that errors out is going to frustrate the customer. Anything that takes more than 4 times as long as it should take will probably frustrate. These transactions score 0 points. So this is the way I like to think of it. Below the T, full marks. Above 4 times that value, you score nothing. Anything in between, you're going to score half. Then we're going to add all those numbers up and we divide it by the total number of transactions, and we come out with a nice number between 0 and 1, right? I think, no, I don't have it there. Do I have it here? No, I don't have it there. Yeah, I have it here. There you go. So we score between 0 and 1. So there you go. Satisfied plus tolerating divided by 2. That's why I say you get half marks for tolerating. You score nothing for frustrated. They're not even in the equation. But then we do divide by the total. So we can never get above 1, but 1 is not perfect. You see? Now I know you guys are thinking that. You think, but Dan, if every single transaction that I have is a satisfied request divided by the total, it would equal 1, right? Correct. But it's wrong. Okay. 0.85 to 0.95 is actually our ideal range, right? When you have an Apdex score, right, not threshold, right? Threshold is the value that you configure here. Like our one is 370 milliseconds. The threshold score is the number between 0 and 1. If you're getting a flat 1, simple. You've just misconfigured your Apdex. How so? Okay. I'm getting transactions that are satisfied, tolerating, frustrated. I look at my app over here, and instead of looking at the mean average, I decide I'm going to pull up the real data. Okay, so I'm going to grab the histogram right here in the middle. Okay, don't know if you guys have seen this before, but check it out. Look, this is my histogram. Where are my transactions falling? Well, nearly all of them are 3 milliseconds or under. Wow. And then I've got a couple all the way up here. 20,000 requests are seemingly taking a long time, right? Right, and this is not everything. This is just, this is the vast majority of the transactions that are being performed on web portal. But let's say I want to impress my boss, right? I will try and find my slowest transactions, yeah? And I will set the Apdex T to something dumb, way beyond that. I can just set the Apdex T on this guy, if I had permission, to 10 seconds. There you go. Cool, set it to 10 seconds. I get a perfect Apdex of 1, and I go home and ring my boss and ask for a bonus, right? But he's not going to give me one because he's going to say, Dan, you stuffed up. And I'll say, no, I didn't. My app is perfect. I got an aptX score of 1. And I'll do this with my finger too, just to make him annoyed. He'll say, you're definitely not going to get a bonus. And let me teach you all about aptX. It needs to be between 0.85, 0.95, and he will send me this thing, right? Which I'm going to send to you guys. He'll say, Dan, clearly you don't understand aptX. And I don't have time to talk about the maths behind it for you, but aptX is all about tracking certain percentiles, and it depends on what percentile you're trying to track. And if you want to capture, for example, 90% of your customers and what their performance profile looks like, then Dan, you should be striving for a 95 aptX score to capture the 90th percentile. You should never be going for a 1, right? And this means that the aptX score value will change according to your performance changing, which is exactly what you want. Now, long story short, let me come all the way back to the beginning as to why we started talking about aptX in the first place. Transaction traces. We only pull transaction traces from our frustrated transactions. So if you go off and you give yourself an aptX threshold of 10 seconds, every transaction will work and everything will be considered satisfied. And so we have no pool of frustrated transactions with which to give you a transaction trace. This is the number one reason why you are not getting transaction trace data in your Relic. It's because you've got an aptX threshold that's not configured, right? The number one is that it's been left at its default value of 500 milliseconds, and you've probably got an app that runs very fast. It might be like a 10 millisecond app, okay? So you'll just never hit 500 milliseconds, so you don't get transaction traces. Anyway, I did say I'd send you this thing. Let me stick it into the chat window. Bang. Best practice, how to choose aptX T. I'm going to let you guys think about that for a couple of minutes because you have quite rightly pointed out that it appears as though we should be having a break now. Right. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. As you're probably well aware, I do get a little bit carried away. So I'm getting 2:35 now. Let's come back in 10 minutes and we will continue on our APM journey. I'll talk to you guys soon. Guys, hello. Are we back? All right, all right. Very nice. We're back. Okay, so what were we talking about? We were talking about AppDex. Ganesh, did you have anything you want to add?
On the app decks, yes. Almost every single time I get a question from the customers on, you know what, I understand the transaction response times, error rate, throughput. What exactly is AppDex? How do you calculate it? That's the question that I get. And I use a pretty similar explanation as like how you showed on how the AppDex is calculated, saying, hey, the number of transactions, as long as they are below the AppDex T, the threshold time that you mentioned is counted as 1, rest of them is 0.5, and beyond 4 is not even counted, right? And AppDex is also a very good indicator of how your end customers are getting impacted by what your backend app is doing. So AppDex, yes, very important, not understood by everyone, but given proper explanation, turns out to be a really good value add.
I feel like so one of the keys to understanding AppDex well actually comes down to what's essentially displayed on this table here. And I mentioned it before we went on break, but at the end of the day, you need to determine for yourselves what percentile it is that you're interested in tracking. Okay, so do you want to keep, the fastest 70% of your customer transactions happy, or are you more stringent? Are you trying to keep 90% of them happy, 95% of them happy? Like, what percentage are you looking for? Now, there's some really cool stuff here, right? Like, let me jump back to my app. So we know where to set the value, but if I just go to my summary, and we knew that we had the mean average here, and again, just understanding these numbers, understanding that mean average gives me information, right? Like, for example, it tells me that my app as an average slowed down for this period of time, right? It doesn't necessarily tell me if how many of my customers would have been impacted, right? But it does tell me that on an average, my app slowed down. Now let's have a look at a different chart, right? We saw the histogram here a second ago, right? And I love this because when you're looking at the mean average, generally speaking, I think in most people's mind, they think all the transactions land about here. That's what people think when you're talking about mean average. Oh, yes, 60 milliseconds. Every time I call that app, it's going to take 60 milliseconds to respond. And it's not actually the case. The reality with this app is that most of your transactions will be incredibly quick. But because we've got a couple that are outliers and that are much, much slower, it's skewed our response time to appear actually a little bit slower than it is under most circumstances, right? Now, we've got another chart here. These are my percentiles that I could look at here. And you can see this is very convenient. We've got the median, right? This is our 50th percentile. Half of the transactions are quicker than this. Look at this. It's a flat line. It's microseconds. It's not even milliseconds. Half of our transactions are in the microseconds, not even on this chart. And the other half are somehow slower than that. Now look at this. 95% of all of our transactions for this app, 95% of them come in at faster than 400 and call it 50 milliseconds. So it means if I'm running a race, right, 95% of all the participants in the race have finished at that time. All right, and then the last 5%, the stragglers at the end, look, they going from the 95th to the 99th is an incredible difference. Now you're looking at 1.5 seconds compared to half a second, 3 times slower just for a 4 percentile difference. So understand what it is that you're trying to track, right? And then obviously your apps will be different, right? All of your apps will be, what you're going to need to do is determine what percentile you're wanting to track and then find the score from there. So I'll show you how to do that very, very quickly, but it's, did I already put it in the chat window? Yeah, this query, I'm not going to go through it in detail with you guys, right? We'll talk a bit more about querying in another session. I will just run it so you can see it for Web Portal. But you can see the query is actually in the link that I gave you guys. So I'm looking at Web Portal, right? So from my transactions, right, I want to get the percentile of the duration, right? So the duration is how long did the transaction take, right? Now, I want that, and let's say I'm interested in my 90th percentile, right? And I want to filter to a specific app, right? So where my app name equals web, that's the one I was looking at, right? So it's not going to help if I get the 90th percentile of the aggregate time across all my apps on the account. Not useful at all. So I need a filter to the app only, right? And yeah, look at that. Wow, so that's very, very fast. So I'm going to make it more strict. I'll say, well, show me. Well, I'll make it broader. Right? Show me where the 95th came in. All right. There you go. And funny enough, that's kind of similar to what the AppDex is currently set at on this app anyway. So I think what probably happened is somebody, came through and decided to put the AppDex threshold at the 95th. Right? So it means that only the slowest 5% of the transactions could impact the actual AppDex score. Now, yeah, the other thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to pick a time window that is representative of the app itself. You'll notice this is just how the app has been performing for the last hour. So this is another thing that you guys need to determine, like, pick a period of time where you think your app is normal and pull out a number from that. Now, I don't know how many apps you guys have got, but like this is how you do it manually, right? You run the query, you pull out a value, then you go to settings, application, and you apply that value. And now all of a sudden you've got an AppDex threshold at a meaningful percentile. Why is this valuable? Because if I've got 10 apps or 100 apps and they've all got different performance characteristics, but I define the same percentile duration for each one, I'll come out with a different number for each one, but my AppDex scores should be uniform across all my apps after doing that. And now, without knowing the milliseconds per app, I can easily say if all my apps have an AppDex score of 0.9, 0.94, 0.95, I can comfortably go, yep, they're performing the way they normally perform, right? They're okay. Make sense? I'm going to show you something else. So we can go to API, guys. You can go to api.newrelic.com. And so I'm currently logged in, and see here I've got the NRU training account. I'll pick the REST API key for their NRU training account. And this is something we mentioned earlier, but notice here we've got applications delete. This is where I would be able to go to delete an app. Now, we're not going to do that at the moment. But what I will do is I will come in here and say, maybe I want to get a list of apps on my account, right? So I'll come in here and say, give me a list. Notice that it gives me the curl statement with the account value. So I could, have this in a script and run it later if I want to. So my API key is already there. At this point, I don't actually need to put anything else. I can just say send that request, and it returns all of the apps. See, remember, I've chosen the REST API key for the NRU training account. So it's returning me the apps just for that one account. Now, if I scroll down, here is the JSON output, and you can see these are my, so yeah, if I wanted to delete, I'd need to put in the app ID parameter. But look at this. This is what I was wanting to show you. See, for the FoodMe app, we have things like, well, we've got performance stats, the app summary, but look, we've got AppDex target and AppDex score. So if I wanted to, I could programmatically adjust the AppDex target. So that's the value that we set. So, and you can see we can do this. So here, look, and look, the application AppDex threshold and the end user AppDex threshold. So change the browser setting definition and the application setting definition for AppDex. So you can come through and do all that. So yes, you can do this programmatically, but I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, but Dan, I don't want to have to write a whole script for this. This is going to be a pain in the neck. All right, I got you on that one too. All right, I'm going to give you this guy. I didn't write this, right? I'm not taking credit for it. I took credit for the fact that I bookmarked it. That's about the extent of it. But yes, my very clever colleague in Ireland is the one who wrote this. And he talks about AppDex here, and he gives you a nice flowchart of what his script does. But using the REST API, it goes in and it does a get on the application details. See, I just did a get as a list, but if I had a specific app in mind, I can show one of them. So I've kind of done the get for you anyway. And now look, he then does a query, which I did the query for you guys too, right? So the script contains that. And then what does it do? It then does a put, right? Which makes perfect sense, right? So we come in here, we find our app, we go off and run a query against that app and get the relevant percentile value, and then we insert the value into the AppDex T by using this guy here, right? Now, I mean, yeah, you can do it all here in this interface, but put in the name of like the ID of your app, and then you can see here you get to define your application AppDex and your end user AppDex as the JSON editable JSON payload there. And I'm getting to show you guys the REST API a little bit as well, which is partly what we were going to do today. So I wanted to show you a couple of things that you can do here. So we're using AppDex as the thing to show you in that regard. Anything to add there, Ganesh?
Nope, I think you covered it.
It's because I got those links.
Someone just asked a couple of questions on, can we set different AppDexes for your application backend and also to browser, which is a very good question. And yes, anything that is reported as under your APM is basically a backend service, and you can set up a separate AppDex for that. And anything that is getting reported under browser, the one that you're going to instrument for your front end is reported as a browser app, and obviously you can have a separate AppDex. Obviously, because your backend services will have a different SLO, if I need to put it that way, a different response time that you want to target your application for. And the same goes with the front end as well. And especially the transactions table that Dan showed some time back. Dan, if you can quickly switch to the transactions page. This specific transactions page comes very handy for teams who are in the journey of continuous improvement of their application performance. And there's a small drop down right on top, sort by most time consuming. Um, and if I click on the most time consuming and then change it to average, the slowest average response time, that's what we when I was a customer of New Relic, that's what I was using very frequently, and then telling a developer saying, hey, here are the top 3 transactions that you guys should improve. And it was a continuous journey of application performance improvement, and this really helped us while we did that, and then it was quite explanatory for the developers.
Yeah, I can see it's good at this shows you where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. If we were able to improve the speed on this one transaction, the entire app would appear much faster.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's another one here as well, guys, throughput. So yeah, that's those are your different values that you can sort by here.
Those are like the biggest offenders of the application, the maximum number of calls coming from one transaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, while we're here, guys, I want to, I mean, we've spent a bit of time talking about, web transactions and app decks. I want to jump into errors a little bit. So let's have a look at, so I mean, I can click on this guy here, right? Error rate, or I can go directly into here. It doesn't matter. It will take me to the same menu either way. But you can see for this web portal app, we are getting a consistent number of errors coming through. Right, it's a small percentage, but you can see that they're coming through kind of non-stop. And you can see here we've got a filter already applied. We are grouping by error class, and we are grouping by the transaction name. That so what was the transaction that ran that resulted in this error? And then you can see here we've got a nice little sort of area chart showing our our top 5 transactions and the error class being generated from them. Now, this is a great page because, again, just like we looked on the transaction page a second ago, where you can see what are our slowest responding transactions, that's why I thought to come here, because this is a nice curated view of all the errors. And sure enough, we can see, without really looking around too much, if we're able to resolve this problem here, right, which is one error, I mean, this is like 800 errors that are all part of this one error class coming from this one transaction name. All right, so I can now go into this. So, okay, well, what's going on here? And you can see it gives me the stack trace on this particular error. All right, I can copy it to the clipboard if I want to look up, go off and investigate it. And I can see down here as well, I've got things like the error attributes, and then I've even got down here custom attributes. So this is where, these are things you guys might need to think about, from a troubleshooting point of view. If you're getting telemetry coming into New Relic and you're seeing this kind of stuff, and you might start thinking to yourself, oh, geez, it'd be really great if we could get that one extra bit of info that would help me solve this problem, right? That's where you need to think about, all right, perhaps you want to capture a custom attribute within the app. So as some examples here, we're capturing user ID, we're capturing the username, right? Of who was the user at the time of this transaction. So these are not things that the agent will pick up by default, but we do give you the ability to tell the agent, hey, can you also capture these additional attributes? Now, the way to do it is going to be a little bit different. So I'll just give you the docs page, right? But usually it's pretty straightforward. It's just defining key value pairs within the agent and you put it in the config, right? So say collect custom attributes. I like to show you this now because, you know, this is one of the places where we can go in here. Well, not there, but yeah, when we jumped into our error, this is one of the places where we can go where we can see the custom attributes that we've captured, and be able to more easily troubleshoot our problems as a result. So let me just stick this into the window. I just noticed there was a question as well about, so I've put that in the chat, collect custom attributes. This is now in the chat window. All these links are provided. And there was a question coming through with regards to different apdex scores, different apdex thresholds for different transactions. Definitely possible to do that. We do that with something called a key transaction. The easiest way to do that is just from the drop-down menu on the leftmost side, or if you're at the home page, it'll be over here somewhere. Just come down, and if you go to more, you see key transactions here. Okay, and that allows me to break my app down into its individual. So I can't do it for this particular, I couldn't do it for Web Portal, but for the other account I can. So I'm on the training account, select an app. So yeah, FoodMe LH3. Okay, bad example. There are no transactions there. Let me select an app that, yeah, okay. This one does have transactions in it. So I can now pick a specific transaction. So yeah, maybe in my FoodMe app, this is like a food ordering application, perhaps posting an order might be quite important to that app. Maybe it's the main function of what it's supposed to do. So I can say, all right, I want to track post the order, and I'm going to create a custom name, you know, place an order, something like that. And I can track that now as a key transaction. And when I go into view it, I get a curated page like this page that is specifically now a deeper look at one transaction in the FoodMe app. Okay, so this is now, this is my post an order, and you can see it's broken down into all the different components of the actual transaction itself. And then I can come in here and look at individual transaction traces if I want to. And you can see I can go, see. Oh, I'll go back to all. I mean, I can edit it here as well. And so let's say we go place an order, and notice that, see there, I've got this is the application threshold, and then this is the browser threshold. So yeah, that's a really important consideration, because yes, you've probably got an app that does a half a dozen different things, but there are some things that are going to be customer facing. There are some things that are going to be much more time sensitive or performance sensitive. So you might want to track them differently. And that does allow you to do exactly that. If you need to turn the thing off, just come back in here to the settings and say stop tracking. It just goes back to normal. So yeah, good question. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions there. It's nice. I'm going to go back to, where was I? Ganesh, help me out. Where was I at?
You were talking.
I was talking about custom
You
attribute.
were talking.
And I was in an error.
That is correct. Yeah.
I was in an error. That's right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm losing it. I'm telling you. Okay, go back to APM. Right, and we're on web portal. And I'm just going to finish this error off. Right, so we were in here, we were looking at an error. And you notice that it also tracks info about when it was first seen, when it was last seen, right? And if there were any logs with regard to this particular error. So if we were capturing logs at this point, then we would even be able to see the logs related to this particular error. So I think at this point, hey, how about we, I might flip it around a bit. If you want to, Ganesh, you want to jump in and you can show a couple of other things. Maybe, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff I haven't shown yet, but you might want to go into some distributed tracing and show that with some logs in context if you've got an account there with that set up. So I'm going to stop my sharing and Ganesh is going to show you a couple of different things.
All right, I am going to change the presenter to myself. Where am I? Sharing my screen view, show my screen. Let me know when the screen is visible.
I got it now.
Very nice. I'm picking up my favorite APM application that I already have, which is the Order Composer, because that connects to a lot of people who already must have done online shopping. So yeah, Order Composer, this is one of the applications that we have, and all the golden signals like Dan already showed. You know the response time, you have the throughput, error rate, abdex score. We spoke a lot about abdex score, both front end and back end here. And now to see the critical transactions that are already captured for this, you already saw them under the transactions here, right? So you're seeing there is something called as a purchase transaction that is picked up. This is a Ruby application, so that's the reason you're seeing the transaction name like this. And when you scroll down, you can see, you know, the transactions that are the traces that are captured here are purely based on the abdex score and also the transactions that are breaching the abdex threshold, right? So now I really want to see which call or which component of this overall transaction or the complete processing of this transaction has contributed to the maximum duration here. And that is when I'd like to click on the traces and then see what's going on here, right? So I go here and then what New Relic does here is it's going to pick up like the top 6 or top 6 to top 10 segments of your overall transaction processing. So basically the slash purchase transaction when it's getting processed, these are the top segments that contributed to the response time, right? And while it gives a beautiful pie chart here, it also gives you details on how many calls happen, what's the overall duration, and what's the total contribution to your transaction response time. So here is the overall response time, 2.11 seconds. And out of 2.11 seconds, 27% approximately is contributed by this call right here. Yeah. Now going into further more details, there are a bunch of custom attributes that Dan already mentioned about, and these are all the custom attributes that are added. Few of them by default picked up by New Relic, and few of them added by the customers, right? Coming down, you also have some agent attributes. Agent attributes are the one that picks up based on the request and response. What is the request that was sent? How long is it? What's the host of this one? And what exactly is the response code that was received from that was generated for this transaction? All right. Okay, I have all of these details, but then I am, as a developer, while this information is okay, kind of enough for me, I would really like to see the get into one level more detail and then see how the overall transaction request or processing has happened here. That's when I would go to trace details. And this gives me a beautiful waterfall kind of model for the complete transaction processing. Starting from the initial interaction, started from this host through a HTTP post call, and then the call got initiated to the same cluster in a different way, and then to a different domain, different domain, different domain, blah, blah, blah. And then this gives me the complete waterfall model of everything that happened during this transaction, right? And if I really want to see what actually happened within the in process, so there is also a process that happens within this. And if I want to see internally what happened, it's going to give me every single segment of what call happened, where is the origin, different monitoring that are being happened. So right now there is also a New Relic part of this, because New Relic instrumentation also is done for this Ruby application, and then starts other interactions that are external to the service, right? And now, yes, I have all of these transaction details, which is good. So now I would like to see that, okay, for this transaction, I wanted to see in a good pictorial representation on what are the additional services this is calling to, and what is the source of this transaction, right? And that is when I would go ahead and then click on distributed traces here. And when I click on distributed traces, so what New Relic by default does is it's going to group up all the similar type of transactions and then show them as a trace group, which is this. And looks like in the last, 30 minutes? In 30 minutes, it has around 540 traces. And there are so many spans on an average for each trace. And there are around 14 entities on an average involved in each of these traces. We'll get to that. I'm going to show you an example. There's a small view on the trend of the transaction duration and error duration here, right? So now let's click on this and then see the individual traces. So all the traces that were captured are right here. Let's take one example, and this is basically a scatter graph that shows at what time, at what duration, how many transactions do you have at this point of time, right? Rather than showing a kind of an area graph or a line graph, we are showing this based on, we are showing this as a scatter graph here, right? Let's click on one of the transactions and then see what components are involved here. When I click on this, like you can see, there is this beautiful representation that says a call was initiated by order processing, which landed on the current service, which is Order Composer. And internally, Order Composer had to make 14 different calls, or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 calls overall to all of these different services. And again, from here, delivery service had to make 2 calls to email notification and 1 to the SMS notification. So this gives you a clear picture on when a purchase transaction happens, every component that is involved, and it also shows what is the response time at each of these services. Additionally, you also have an option to just do a mouse over, and this one is going to give you how the golden signals are during this time. And if there are any hosts involved, it's also going to give you the host health here. Well, for this transaction, I know this is how the behavior is. These are all the components that are involved, and the complete waterfall model of when a service is called, and every component that is involved, and what's the contribution for this, right? Well, for this specific transaction, I know that these are all the components that are involved. Good. So now, but for this individual service, which is the Order Composer, I also want to see from an architect point of view, I want to see all the origin services and all the destination services. And that is when service map would come very handy, wherein this one is going to show you that, hey, for Order Composer, order processing is the only service that's going to call you, and Order Composer, you are calling all of these services internally. This is very similar to the same distributed trace that I showed you, because that's the only path that Order Composer service has. But in case if you have multiple APM services calling Order Composer, you would see all of them lined up here. And if auto composer is going to call not just this 14, but then I'm just going to call more, everything would be lined up here. So this one shows you all the sources, all the destinations from the service that you're seeing in the center. Cool. So let's go back to distributed tracing, pick up the same service that we had. And I have this service, this trace here, and then this one is showing me, okay, 14 components, 14 entities involved here, and then so much of response time. So now being a developer loves, all the developers love logs, right? So whenever we report an issue to the developers, they would be like, hey, you know what, I'm going to check logs. That's the first thing that they would do, because logs isn't their control. They write the logs. So they always love their babies, right? So now what they do is they just go and check in the logs. But now in this context, I'm giving them response times of individual transactions or individual segments, if I have to put it that way, and then saying this is the response time that it took. But now as a developer, I would really like to see the logs of this specific trace. How do I do that? And that is a concept that Dan mentioned as logs in context. And with New Relic, and with proper configuration that is done, you will be able to tag your application logs that are generated by your backend services and the traces that you're seeing on the API. All you have to do is just click on See Logs on this top right corner here. Clicking on that would show you the complete, would show you all the logs that are related to this specific transaction and coming from every single service that is involved in processing this transaction. Right? This is a first level view that you can see here, which gives you details on which pod is doing this. You can see the pod name here. You can see the namespace here. And like you can see, there you go. There's a pod name or a status that is involved, and you get a lot of details here, right? But you really want to go ahead and then do further filtering here. Query logs is the right way to do this. Clicking on query log would actually open the logs page and would show you every single log entry that is involved from different services, different pods, different hosts that are involved in processing this request. Right. Additionally, there are a bunch of attributes that you can use on your left panel, where you can pick up based on the source, you can pick up based on the host ID. So for example, if I say container name, right, I'm just saying add, and I can go ahead and then see there are 5 log entries for order status container, 2 for packaging room, 2 for bubble wrap, and blah blah blah. A lot of them, right? I can see all of them here. That's how, if I really want to filter and then see for this transaction, what happened with my email notification. I just click on email notification, and there's an automatic filter that is applied, and it says started processing the email notification at 22:44:159, and it got a successful delivery from the notifications on 23/20/20. Right. So that's how you take a look at the trace at a very high level from a segment level. Then you drill down to the complete waterfall model of that trace. And further, you go back and then see the dependencies mapping through service map and also through distributed traces. And from distributed traces, if you want one level more detail, you click on logs in context and then come to this page and take a look at what's happening with the logs. Anything else you want to add here, Dan?
Just that, so if we take it back to what we talked about in the beginning, and you use the guided install, and you do the infrastructure guided install for the New Relic infra agent. This is not the application agent, but you do it for the infrastructure agent. Then it will install the logging component as well. So you, when this first came out, you needed to configure a log shipper. You needed to have some other logging tool to be able to send logs to New Relic. But with the way things are now, you do a standard infrastructure install, and during the install in the wizard, you just say, yes, do logs, right? And it's able to then send the logs in. So you don't need anything else except for the underlying infrastructure agent to get the logs. Then in terms of doing the correlation like what Ganesh just showed you, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when he clicked on show logs in context, that just did a search through through the logging database that has all the log entries, and it searched for anything that matched a specific trace ID. Okay, so then it comes down to, okay, how do we get a trace ID? That ultimately comes down to the next level up, where you now have your application level instrumentation, and your application agent needs to have the, well, I mean, it is by default, right? So unless you've turned it off, it'll have distributed tracing enabled, right? So I guess it's kind of a really long-winded way of saying it's pretty much out of the box, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Ganesh. I think with the way it's set up now, it's you install the app agent, you install the infra agent, and I think it's pretty much out of the box compared to even, I'd say, 4 or 5 months ago, where there were configs that needed to be done.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, you don't actually need to do anything, right? The trace ID will already be embedded by the application agent, so that when the infra agent does the shipping, it comes in and it's already annotated, and then it makes it very easy for you to search, just like you can see what Ganesh has got up on the screen right now. There's that specific trace ID, and as you would expect, there's only going to be a handful of logs only during the specific period of time when that transaction was occurring that appears there. So yeah, it's an extremely powerful function, and the other point I want to make is that this does not apply only to distributed tracing, right? Logs in context will appear on half a dozen different, I mean, like, for example, the errors. You'll get logs in context in errors as well if you were shipping log info with that app, which the example I gave you didn't have it. Also for things like Kubernetes clusters, things as well. So you can, we'll probably have a look at that a little bit later on, but you can go into a specific container or a pod, and there'll be a little button there saying show me logs for that thing, and now you've got just specific logs on the exact object that you're looking at. And I know you say that that developers love logs, Ganesh. I don't think they really love logs. I think they love logs in context, right?
Yes,
Logs
that is
for the
correct.
sake of it, logs for the sake of it are a headache, right? And we collect everything only because we need to look for stuff, and they're a horrible thing to have to search through to find exactly what you want. But the logs in context is gold. Like, it's fantastic
No,
stuff.
absolutely. I think that is what you really what you rightly mentioned, because I know developers who always go to log, but then they would complain about writing queries to get the right entry of log,
And
which is something that's not required now.
yeah, and there's another question in there as well, which is a really good point, right? See how you've got views and attributes. So if you have custom attributes and you've got very specific things that you want to search against, yes, you can do that from here as well, right? So you can see in
Correct.
that left panel there, it shows you that you've got attributes. This allows you to, I mean, basically break apart your log and say, okay, what are the fields that we've got? And then filter according to the specific fields from within the log telemetry coming through. So yes, the question about can you filter based on the custom attributes? Yes, you definitely can. Recommended way to set up infra agents, yeah, on Kubernetes and OpenShift for reporting to New Relic. I believe for both of those, it is now just guided install.
Yes, it is guided
Because
install.
it's an
There's a
auto.
Helm chart that is already, yeah, there's a Helm chart that's already prepared. All you have to do is just get the Helm chart and then deploy it on your Kubernetes cluster.
Yep. All right.
We can go from traces to logs and context. So coming from here, so you go to the transactions and then you see your list of transactions. You pick up the one that you're interested in and just click on distributed traces here. Click on distributed traces. That would show you all the trace groups. You click on the trace groups to see your individual traces. You identify the trace that you want to, click on that, and then see what entities are impacted, what entities are contacted, and rest of the waterfall model of the whole transaction flow. And that is where you would see this little button that says see logs. You click on this, and then it shows you a preview of all the logs that are correlated. It's just a preview. But if you want to get into further more details and then say, I want to drill these logs down, that is when you click on query these logs. That's where New Relic is going to take you to the logs page, apply all the filters based on the trace ID readily for you. All you have to do is just go through the logs here. And if you're interested, add more filters on the attributes.
All right. I'm just going to. Where am I? I'm just answering a question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do we need to instrument an app written in Golang separately within our agent, or is it out of the box? Very good question. The one that we're getting with from a lot of Asian customers these days, because Golang is super famous in Asia right now. Yeah, there is a library that's available for Golang. You need to add it to your your modules library or your list of modules when you write your Golang service, and have this very little instrumentation. You'll have to do it instrumentation within the app. That's because um, Golang is not like Java, where you can interpret the overall compilation and then add some instrumentation. And that's the reason for Golang library. You import the library and then you add. There are a lot of handlers that are already created within the library to make it easier for you. All you have to do is just add a handler to the function call that you're making, and that should bring back all the data back to onto New Relic. Another question that says, does distributed tracing in New Relic conforms to open tracing or open telemetry standards? Yes, very much. But distributed tracing, complete distributed tracing support for open telemetry is available, but then we are still improving it. Is that right, Dan? Or what is it?
It is supported actually. We used to have a different thing called cross application tracing, if you remember that.
Yeah.
That was distributed tracing too. It's like essentially tracing across application, but the difference with that is that cross application tracing was proprietary to New Relic. It wasn't industry standard, and that's why they moved away from that and they went to what we now refer to as distributed tracing because it adheres to the W3C trace context. Yeah. So it is. It's perfectly plausible that you might have a transaction that has 14 spans, like you just showed before, and several of those spans may be instrumented with a different tracing tool. For example, like you might have, I don't know, one division of your teams, one part of your business decided to put Zipkin in, right? And so they went down that path, and Zipkin's there, so they can play nice together, right? So you don't need to then re-instrument. You go, well, I've already got Zipkin in that segment. I'm going to put New Relic in these other parts where I've got nothing. And then because it all adheres to W3C trace context, we can knit them all together and still understand that it's part of the same overarching transaction. So, yeah.
uh, how to stack error logs for a particular timestamp into a single log message.
So I think that's I think that's a
yeah, go
reference
ahead.
to before when I showed the errors, right? You might want to show that actually, because so the thing is, when we were looking at errors there, we started on the aggregate where we looked at the error class, but then when I clicked on it, it was actually showing me error number 1 out of a whole list of errors. So yeah, you don't get the aggregate of all the errors in one log message for the whole lot. You will be able to see the logs per error. And yes, the logs do come in through the infra agent or through any supported log shipper. So FluentD, FluentBit, they're the ones I always remember. There's other ones as well. If you're using other log shippers, you can use them. We're not telling you have to, but if you haven't instrumented, the new Relic infra agent includes a log shipper, so you might as well use it. Here's a good question. Different accounts, downstream services in a different account. So you basically need permission. What's your recommendation there, Ganesh?
My recommendation would be to bring the applications to the same account. That's the easiest way to do it. Use the same license key and then bring them to the same account. But if you want to see distributed tracing across different New Relic accounts, I don't think that's possible. But what you can do is you can build dashboards that can show you, some kind of relation between these applications. But if you want them to be connected, like how you're seeing right now on the distributed tracing um, module, then, and if the data is getting reported to multiple accounts, I don't think that's possible. As far as I know. Dad, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I thought we could go. I thought we could go cross account. Let me just
cross account. Yeah.
I'll have a bit of a look.
Very good question. By the time you look at that, I'm gonna take like a couple of other questions. Someone asked how New Relic trace Kafka consumer. So because Kafka instrumentation is completely Kafka monitoring, messaging and the implementation is completely asynchronous. It's basically a messaging system, obviously. So we already have a use case for this where a couple of our customers have implemented where they're actually adding trace ID as part of the Kafka message at a producer level. And when the consumer picks it up, that's when we know how long did it take on the Kafka consumer side and Kafka producer side, right? So you can add additional trace. You can add trace ID as part of your message, and then there is some documentation. I can share that here right with you, and please go through that. And if you need anything additional, please let us know. We can help you with that.
No, I can't find anything very specific to that. I'll keep looking.
Yep.
Let me see, what else have we got here? Multiple same agents reporting the same app to different New Relic accounts. So multiple instances of an app, each one with its own agent reporting to different accounts. Yes, you can do that. I mean, we kind of do that in a fashion anyway with things like, maybe the dev instance and the prod instance kind of thing. But yes, it's definitely possible. Automate tagging. You want to talk about that? Yes, we can definitely do that. Yeah, so yeah, is there a way to automate tags and also automate things like the infra and the APM agent install? So yes, we can do those things. Did you want to talk about those a little bit, Ganesh?
Automating the tags. Sorry, where is the question? I'm just trying to find the question here.
3:41. Your time will be different to mine. 2 minutes ago. Three minutes
3:41.
ago.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah, is there a way to automate tags to the applications and infra and APM agent installations? Yes, very much possible. One, you can add these as part of the installation commands. So, for example, just through the guided install, you also have quite a lot of parameters that are available that you can pass as command line to add your tags. That's one way of doing it. And the other way of doing this is through Terraform. In Terraform, you can add tags and entities to almost any entity that you have on New Relic. And a lot of our customers are already using this. And there was also a Terraform session that we have. I'm going to share a reference to the Terraform repository that New Relic has, and that has references to this. Can we set separate authentication to dashboard for different clients? This is a roadmap. We are actually working it based on working on getting in not authentication, but then we are trying to set up give the capability to the users to set up different roles for different people. And yeah, if you have different clients, you can set up dashboards, give access only to different roles, and you can create a user with that specific role, and the customers will have the clients will have access to only those dashboards or entities. Kafka documentation, yes, already shared. That's it. Multiple supporting the same application. Okay. Used to monitor service mesh or API mesh gateway infrastructure. We do have an integration for Istio, but then that is still in a very premature state, I would say. We are bringing up to the market standards pretty soon. Yeah, please watch out. Please watch out for updates from us.
I did find a page that mentioned distributed tracing across sub accounts, so I've put that through there. I think off completely disparate accounts, I don't think so, but across sub accounts it should be fine.
Can I backfill data in into NRDB, or it must be collected into real time? So right now, if you are ingesting any data into New Relic, all of the data is collected real time. I don't think you will be able to backfill data in New Relic database. Anything that's collected by agents right now gets exported into New Relic.
Yeah, it takes it all in real time.
Yeah.
If anything, it does the opposite of backfilling. What's the word? It rolls your data up into aggregates over time. So just like when you look at something far away, it's not crystal clear. It's only as it appears closer that it becomes clear. So the same thing with your data in New Relic. Remember, this is from our first session, right? Telemetry data is transient. Okay, we keep aggregate data, but over a period of time, we roll it up and roll it up and roll it up so that we get fewer and fewer data points that represent that specific time frame. Because yeah, the relevance and the value of telemetry data is essentially in the near real-time records that we maintain. Once the records become quite old, the relevance of the granular detail disappears, and the only thing that stays relevant is just the aggregate data when you want to compare against, previous timeframes.
A lot of questions usually come when people ask that, do you have out of the box instrumentation for a specific type of framework? But most of the times we already have out of the box instrumentation, but a few things which we do not have. For example, let's say, good old search engine technology called as Endeca, right? Oracle Endeca. If there are, or something for which we do not have instrumentation, or we have decommissioned it already. One answer for this one is that if you have a command line utility to capture stats for that specific technology, you can use New Relic Flex. New Relic Flex is a kind of an intra-agent level instrumentation where you can run any command on your server and then send the output to New Relic. And once it is on New Relic, you can start updating, you can start running through it, and then make use of creating trend graphs, understanding, doing further performance analysis. It's not any additional additional agent that you have to install. It comes along with infra agent. All you just have to do is add this additional library to your infra agent.
I just put a link for Flex in the chat as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, with that particular tool, you can essentially instrument just about anything. All right. I think I was going to give you guys a lab to do, but we have shown you a lot of things and gone through so many questions that I think I will put our lab off until next week. So we'll go through a lab next session. Having said that, just before we finish up, I'm just sitting here just doing links and links and links, lots and lots of links. So next link, bang. There's a Google Drive link in there as well. Okay, that's the link for the sessions. Okay, not the ones for the future, like you'll come in here to go to meeting like normal, but that is the link for the previous ones. Okay, so there's only one at the moment, right? Obviously. All right, let's see. So yeah, we've talked about, the only thing that we haven't done, and actually maybe I don't know if you want to run through this, Ganesh. The other thing I wanted to talk about today was deployment markers. We haven't even mentioned deployment markers, but I've had them on a couple of screens for you guys, and you really need to be using them. You should use them. They're an excellent tool. But I don't know. Do you want to do it, Ganesh? You want me to do it? I don't mind.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
Let me just share my screen.
All right, cool.
All right, I'm just going to go to my New Relic One platform here, then say, just going to one of this APM. I'll just go back to my, let's go to the web portal, our web portal app. I'm going to like last 12 hours maybe. Was any deployment done? Oh, there you go. There were 3 deployments that were done to this. Yeah, so deployment markers are come very useful when you want to understand your application performance before and after a change that you're doing into the system, right? And while you know the timing and you have a change management system, or probably you're using something like Jira where you track the deployments, this is always a single point of the view that you want to have when you're about to see, say, a huge spike here and in your response time, or a drop in your updates, and you really want to know what happened, what exactly is this deployment marker, right? And the deployment markers can be added through a simple REST API call that you make, and a lot of our customers use this as part of their CI/CD pipeline. So how does the REST API look to add the deployment marker? I'll just show this here, deployment markers on New Relic. This is the easiest, this is the best and the easiest way to do this. A simple post call. All you have to do is add this post call as part of your CI/CD pipeline. When you're deploying your code, you deploy the code and then just make this post call, right? If you have the application ID, you have the API key with you, add the details here of your application, and then just make an API call. And if you really don't want to do this, you have PowerShell option if you're running on Windows. And this is the best way to mark something on New Relic, and you will get to know, hey, okay, there is a change that happened at this time, and all the details that you have provided in through that API call will get reported here. So like, as you can see here, looks like someone made a deployment to a plan service, and then it says who deployed it and what's the revision here, what details are there, and all the teams that are involved for this change, right? This gives you a really good picture. So in this case, as you can see here, a deployment that was done at 11:31 my time has actually improved the performance. The response times have dropped from, like, say, 100 plus milliseconds to somewhere around 40 milliseconds, right? So yeah, that's the job of, sorry, the capability of deployment markers gives you a view on how your application is performing before and after a change, and tells you, did you do the right job or did you mess it up?
All right, that's one other thing I want to add with regard to deployment markers is we call them deployment markers, right? They're for marking deployments, but I just want to highlight that's not only what they're for, okay? We have customers that use these. So look, if your telemetry data might change for some reason, if it's going to be anomalous in some way and you have the means of describing it, you should describe it, okay? So
right.
Let's take something completely different, like you have a marketing campaign that goes live,
Exactly.
that drives traffic to your site. You know, you got a 24-hour flash sale, you got something like that. It's not a deployment. It doesn't need to be a deployment, but it will change your data, right? So what you want is to be able to describe what's going on in your environment that your agent isn't necessarily going to pick up. It's not going to know why you've got heaps more throughput, but it'll see that you have a lot more throughput. And there's many times where I'm talking back in the old days now, right? Where I used to go out to the customer, right? This is like when I was allowed to do that. But we'd go out to the customer and we'd pull up their data, okay? And we'd have it there, and invariably there would be somebody in the room that would say something like, "What's that spike for?" Right? And it would be from 3 days ago. And there'd be somebody else in the room that was able to say, "Oh, don't you remember we did this thing and that's what happened?" Right? So anything like that is a really good candidate for a deployment marker. And just grab the curl statement. Ganesh showed you where to do that via the docs page where there was a sample there. I showed you the interactive live page. Like if you just go to api.newrelic.com, it will create all the curl statements for you for anything that you may want to do. Yeah, so if he picks one of the REST API key there, that's fine. It's the same thing, yeah. And you can invoke it here from this screen if you want, or you can then just take the command and you've got it on your desktop. You can deploy it manually whenever you want, or add it to your pipeline deployments so that it will run when it's supposed to run, right? The timestamps on these are automatic. Okay, they will just it gets recorded when it gets received, right, by the API directly. Now there is the option of altering the timestamp, but you got to be careful with that because it lets you put a deployment marker into history. So for example, when I went out to the customer and we see that spike from 3 days ago, we could go back and annotate that. But what we can't do is we can't put a deployment marker at a point in time earlier than my most recent deployment. Okay, so if I did a deployment last night and I've put a marker there and I want to annotate something from 3 days ago, I have to firstly delete the marker from last night, go back and annotate 3 days ago, and then come. So the idea is not for you to go through and squiggle all over your telemetry. It's really just, maybe you did a deployment last night, you forgot about it, the following morning you can annotate it. But yeah, we don't really have the mechanism for you to go back and describe things from months ago. Right? It's not what it's for. But yeah, deployment markers are a fantastic tool. I will, next session, when you guys come back next week, I will get you guys to do a couple of deployments into this account. All right, we've run out of time today because we've talked about all kinds of different stuff. But yes, I want to get you doing some things that we have discussed today, but we will do them next week. But thank you very much for all those questions. We've covered tons of things today. You guys have been asking things non-stop, which is great. And look forward to having you all back here again at 1 p.m. Sydney time next Monday.
Yes. Cool. All right then. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Yeah,
bye. Talk to you next Monday.
Yeah, we'll let you go now because we are right on time. All right, so yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.